It smelled of dirt and mold. There was no doubt that it was the basement of the pyramid. Pharos sat up in Margamore and saw the torches hanging on the wall, realizing he had returned to the surface world. He wondered if he was dreaming, but when he saw Claire's bracelet on his wrist, he knew that wasn't a dream.
I must hurry, or Orgos will be executed.
Pharos got off Margamore and grabbed a torch, then ran up the stairs. Once outside, Pharos threw away the torch. The sun burned overhead just as it had before Pharos had gone to the underworld.
Straight out of the forest in the direction of north. Which means I should head south. Which way is south?
Comparing the position of the sun and his own shadow, Pharos ran in the direction he thought was south. He had no memory of how he got from the old woman's hut to the pyramid. So he's not sure if he's heading in the right direction. But he had no choice but to believe and move forward. By the time the sun began to set, Pharos' pace had nearly reached walking speed. Still, he ran hard. How long has he run since then? Just as the water in the leather bag was about to run out, a green forest appeared before Pharos' eyes. Pharos forgot his fatigue and ran at full speed towards the forest.
Crust One's information said that Ibiza should go straight through the forest to the east and then head north. Which meant that if I went west I would find the old woman's hut. I could also find the horse there. I must find the horse if I am to arrive in time for the execution.
Entering the forest, Pharos pushed his way through the trees towards the setting sun. However, he could not find the hut where the old woman lived. The forest only got deeper and it got darker. There was a big tree in the way. Pharos, in a daze, collapsed and leaned against the trunk. He felt like he was running out of energy. Come to think of it, the last time the cruststone he saw of Ibiza had been rewritten. The actual content of what Pharos said to Ibiza is different, and the way he got to the pyramids is also different. This means that the content about the public execution may have been rewritten. Suddenly, this thought crossed Pharos' mind. However, even though the content was different, the events that were happening were based on fact. If it's not true, then adding the content about public execution seems too unnatural. If that's the case, I should have seen Cruststone of Orgos. Pharos regretted having hastily turned back along the path of light. But it was too late. And if I look at the Cruststone of Orgos, it will have been altered in the same way. Now, it is impossible to know whether something is true or not in Cruststone. I really have to see it with my own eyes. But Pharos no longer had the energy to motivate himself to wander aimlessly through the dark forest. Pharos drew the dagger at his waist. The red stone is a guiding stone. Elandra said that.
Please, guiding stone, please show me the way to the capital.
Pharos prayed to himself, gripping the dagger in both hands. Then, the red dragon stone emitted a dazzling light, and it pointed a straight line to the right direction. Seeing the ray of light, Pharos' whole body was filled with strength again. Following the light, Pharos walked along a pathless road and climbed a steep slope, where he found a white horse tied to a tree. It was the horse that Pharos rode from the capital. Pharos put the dagger back on his belt and approached the horse.
It's quite amazing that you could be safe in a forest like this, where there are wolves.
As he stroked the horse appreciatively, Pharos suddenly felt something was off.
Wait a second, it's weird that a horse is tied up here. Wasn't that just in the rewritten information in Ibiza's Cruststone? In reality, I had been taken to the pyramids while I was sleeping. Or I just didn't remember and had unknowingly ridden the horse here and then walked to the pyramids on foot.
His memories of what should have actually happened in reality and the rewritten information of Ibiza's Cruststone became mixed up. Even Pharos couldn't decide which information was correct. Either way, the fact that the horses were tied there made it seem more likely that the Orgos were being taken to the capital.
I must hurry.
In a dimly lit underground prison, two men crawled on the ground, covered in blood. They are both groaning and writhing in pain. Nearby stood two soldiers with whips in their hands, and two more soldiers on guard. Then Helosmus came in.
You still don't know where Pharos is?
Yes, sir, they're pretty stubborn.
Answered one of the soldiers present.
From the looks of them, maybe they really don't know.
I told you. I don't know.
Said one tortured man, who, enduring the pain, moved only his eyes and looked at Helosmus. Helosmus walked up to the man and squatted down.
Hospenus, there's no need to be so stubborn. We all know you are one of the ringleaders of the rebellion. The plan is that Pharos will assassinate the king, right? Anyway, the plan won't work. Just throw it up and feel better. We really don't know anything about that kind of plan. We have nothing to do with it.
Hospenus said in pain, and Helosmus snorted in exasperation.
What about you, Spratulus? You want to feel better, don't you?
Asked Helosmus, turning to the thin man lying face down next to Hospenus. Spratulus's shoulders were rising and falling, but he didn't respond, as if he didn't have the energy to answer.
Well, okay.
Said Helosmus and stood up.
In any case, these men will be executed tomorrow. Torture them until they speak out. If they die, that's it. I have the king's permission.
After telling the soldiers with whips, Helosmus left the place.
Damn. Why did this have to happen to us? This is all Pharos' fault. I don't know what he was planning, but he dragged us into this. I'll never forgive him.
As the light of his life was fading, Hospenus's desire for revenge burned. Pharos woke up on the back of a horse galloping rhythmically across the dry land. The night had completely dawned. Pharos was exhausted and had fallen asleep on the horse. However, as if inheriting Pharos' will to follow the red light, the horse continued to ride without rest, chasing the red light. A familiar scene appeared before Pharos' eyes. It's just a little further to the capital. However, even when he arrived at the capital, there was no way to rescue Orgos and the others. Even if he were to take strong measures, there would be many guards. Pharos feels he can't do it alone.
Anyway, I guess I'll just have to get them to listen. Now let's leave it to fate. If Orgos and Emalua can be saved, I am willing to give up this life.
Pharos was ready for it. As the north gate came into view, Pharos pulled the reins and slowed his horse. He put the dagger he had been carrying at his belt into his pouch, mounted his horse and boldly headed to the gate. The gate was open, and there was only one gatekeeper.
What do you want?
The gatekeeper asked suspiciously, seeing Pharos in his threadbare clothes.
I came to return my horse.
Pharos replied, and the gatekeeper's expression softened a little.
I see. Today at noon in the central square, the public execution of the traitors will take place. If you're out, you may not know this, but an order has been issued to have as many people as possible witness the execution. The king himself will be in attendance. The body will be left there for a while, but you should see the execution site. A large number of people have already gathered, though.
The gatekeeper said that, and readily allowed Pharos in.
After all, public executions will still take place.
Pharos galloped to the central square. A chant rang out in the square.
Death to the traitors, God's punishment for those who defy the king.
Thousands of people surrounded the execution ground in the center of the square, raising their fists and shouting loudly. Dismounting from his horse outside the square, Pharos hurried through the crowds to the execution site. There were 2 gallows at the execution ground, and next to them were the bloody bodies of Orgos. And an old woman with their wrists were tied together and hanging. Both of them were motionless with their heads bowed. Beside them stood a soldier, each holding a curved, hooked sword. To the right of the execution ground was a special platform set up for viewing the execution, where the king and queen, accompanied by many vassals, sat on ornate chairs. They were laughing and drinking as if they were having a party to celebrate this execution. In front of the execution site, strong soldiers stood in a line to keep the crowds from getting any closer. Pushing through the crowd and somehow making it to the execution ground, Pharos pushed aside the soldiers who tried to stop him and called out Orgos' name.
Orgos!
He shouted repeatedly, shaking off the soldiers who were trying to hold him down, but Orgos still didn't respond.
He's one of the traitors. Hang him too.
As Pharos recognized Helosmus shouting at the soldiers, he lost his mind in anger. He put his hands into his waist bag and waved them at the soldiers who were trying to arrest him. When the soldier flinched, he tumbled onto the execution ground, and Pharos ran as fast as he could to the gallows.
Such an execution should not happen. Absolutely wrong. Orgos!
Pharos cried as loud as he could.
Just wait. I'll cut that rope right now.
Pharos felt a heavy impact on his back. But there was no time to worry about that. Without looking back, Pharos ran. After that, he got a number of blows to his back. He was almost within reach. But Pharos' dagger never reached Orgos' rope. A few steps before Orgos, Pharos collapsed to his knees. There were a number of arrows stuck in his back.
Am I going to die here? Neither Orgos nor Emalua could be saved.
Writhing in pain, Pharos looked at Orgos. Orgos came to his senses, his eyes wide open at the carnage that had unfolded before his eyes, and shouted Pharos' name with all his might. But that voice did not reach Pharos' ears. Pharos' vision was shrouded in darkness. When he noticed, Pharos found himself walking down a passageway shrouded in a haze of light.
I see. I went to Margamore again to look at the rewritten information on Crustone. Let's get through this passage quickly. Claire, Elandra and Ramal should be waiting.
As he exited the tunnel of light, a blinding white light filled his field of vision. Gradually the flesh that made up Pharos disappeared, and merged with the light.